Good afternoon and welcome to number 26 in the Read Through the Bible series. We're in Genesis chapter 48 and we're reading about Joseph and the last days of Jacob. Genesis 48. After this Joseph was told, "Behold, your father is ill." So he took with him his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. And it was told to Jacob, "Your son Joseph has come to you." Then Israel, of course Israel is Jacob, summoned his strength and sat up in bed. And Jacob said to Joseph, "God Almighty appeared to me at Luz is Bethel, in the land of Canaan, and blessed me, and said to me, Behold, I will make you fruitful, and multiply you, and I will make of you a company of peoples, and will give you this land to your offspring after you, for an everlasting possession. And now, your two sons, who were born to you in the land of Egypt before I came to you in Egypt, are mine. Ephraim and Manasseh shall be mine, as Reuben and Simeon are. And the children that your father after them shall be yours. They shall be called by the name of their brothers in their inheritance." And that's what happened when they came into the land of Canaan and it became the land of Israel. Ephraim and Manasseh were considered two separate tribes, just like Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, and so on. So Joseph fathered two tribes. None of the other boys were considered two tribes, only Joseph. And so you won't find the tribe of Joseph when you're looking at Israel later on in, say, the book of Kings or the book of Judges or around there. You will find the tribe of Ephraim and the tribe of Manasseh. So this is what Jacob is saying to Joseph here. "Your two sons who were born to you in the land of Egypt before I came to you in Egypt are mine. Ephraim and Manasseh shall be mine, as Reuben and Simeon are. And the children that your father after them shall be yours. They shall be called by the name of their brothers in their inheritance. As for me, when I came from Padan," that's Padan Aram, that's the plain of Aram, "to my sorrow, Rachel died in the land of Canaan on the way, when there was still some distance to go to Ephrath," that's Bethlehem. "And I buried her there on the way to Ephrath," that is Bethlehem. When Israel saw Joseph's sons, he said, "Who are these?" Joseph said to his father, "They are my sons, whom God has given me here." And he said, "Bring them to me, please, that I may bless them." Now the eyes of Israel were dim with age, so that he could not see. So Joseph brought them near him, and he kissed them and embraced them. And Israel said to Joseph, "I never expected to see your face, and behold, God has let me see your offspring also." Then Joseph removed them from his knees, and he bowed himself with his face to the earth. And Joseph took them both, Ephraim in his right hand, and towards Israel's left hand, and Manasseh in his left hand, towards Israel's right hand. You see, the greater blessing would go to the one on Israel or Jacob's right hand. And Israel stretched out his right hand and laid it on the head of Ephraim, who was the younger, and his left hand on the head of Manasseh, crossing his hands, for Manasseh was the firstborn. And he blessed Joseph and said, "The God before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has been my shepherd all my life long to this day, the angel who has redeemed me from all evil, bless the boys. And in them let my name be carried on, and the name of my fathers Abraham and Isaac, and let them grow into a multitude in the midst of the earth." When Joseph saw that his father laid his right hand on the head of Ephraim, it displeased him, and he took his father's hand to move it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's head. And Joseph said to his father, "Not this way, my father, since this one is the firstborn. put your right hand on his head." But his father refused and said, "I know, my son, I know. He also shall become a people, and he also shall be great. Nevertheless, his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his offspring shall become a multitude of nations." So he blessed them that day, saying, "By you Israel will pronounce blessings, saying, God make you as Ephraim and as Manasseh." Thus he put Ephraim before Manasseh. Then Israel said to Joseph, "Behold, I am about to die, but God will be with you, and will bring you again to the land of your fathers. Moreover, I have given to you, rather than to your brothers, one mountain slope that I took from the hand of the Amorites with my sword and my bow." He's giving one portion extra to Joseph. And that was true. Ephraim and Manasseh both got sections of Canaan as their portion. Chapter 29. Then Jacob called his sons and said, "Gather yourselves together, that I may tell you what shall happen to you in days to come. Assemble and listen, O sons of Jacob. Listen to Israel, your father." And he's about to pronounce the blessing. Now remember that Esau longed for the blessing after Jacob had tricked his father out of it. Abraham got the blessing. That was passed on to Isaac. God passed it on to Isaac. And Isaac passed a blessing on to Jacob, thinking it was Esau. And now Jacob is passing a blessing on. As one of the patriarchs, he's able to do this. And he's passing them on to his 12 boys. So he starts off with the oldest, Reuben. "Reuben, you're my firstborn, my might, and the first fruits of my strength, preeminent in dignity, and preeminent in power. Unstable as water, you shall not have the preeminence, because you went up to your father's bed, and then you defiled it. He went up to my couch." Do you remember earlier on, and it was only one sentence a few chapters back, where it tells us that Reuben lay with his father's concubine, Bilhah, and Jacob got to hear about it. Well, now the result of that is that Reuben loses the blessing. "You shall not have the preeminence, because you went up to your father's bed and defiled it. You went up to my couch." The next two brothers are Simeon and Levi. Simeon and Levi are brothers. Weapons of violence are their swords. Let my soul come not into their counsel. O my glory, be not joined to their company. For in their anger they killed men, and in their willfulness they hamstrung oxen. Cursed be their anger, for it is fierce, and their wrath, for it is cruel. I will divide them in Jacob, and scatter them in Israel. Up till now, these blessings are exact. Reuben did not become the foremost of the tribes in the land of Canaan. Reuben took up land in the Transjordan. They didn't actually cross the Jordan, and they were not considered the first of the tribes. Simeon and Levi indeed were scattered throughout Israel. Simeon was allotted a section of land within the area that Judah was given. But then we hear nothing more about Simeon. Whether he was assimilated into Judah or not, we don't know. But nothing more is heard about Simeon after that. So his piece of land, we don't know. They're scattered throughout Israel. Levi somewhat redeemed themselves through Moses and Aaron. They became the priestly tribe. But being the priestly tribe, they were scattered throughout Israel because they needed to be priests throughout the whole of Israel. So they were given priestly cities and the land around the cities as their possession. But indeed they were scattered throughout Israel. It's exactly right what Jacob is saying here. Jacob is Israel, of course. Then he comes to the fourth son, Judah. Judah, your brothers shall praise you. Your hand shall be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's sons shall bow down before you. We'll hear more about that in a second. Judah is a lion's cub. From the prey, my son, you have gone up. He stooped down, he crouched as a lion, and as a lioness, who dares rouse him? The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until tribute comes to him. Or, with a slight revocalization, until he comes to whom it belongs. That makes more sense. The scepter indicates kingship. The ruler's staff indicates kingship. And from Judah, we have King David. In fact, the line of kings comes through Judah. So again, the fourth blessing holds firmly and perfectly, because the kings come through Judah right down until it comes to him to whom it belongs, which is the Lord Jesus Christ, who was the son of David, as we've read earlier on in the book of Matthew, when the blind men called out, Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me, or have mercy on us. So the scepter won't depart until it comes to him to whom it belongs. And to him shall be the obedience of the peoples, binding his foal to the vine and his donkey's colt to the choice vine. He has washed his garments in wine and his vesture in the blood of grapes. His eyes are darker than wine and his teeth whiter than milk. These are all blessings, saying that the goodness of the land will go to Judah, the richness of the land. Then we come to Zebulun. Zebulun and Issachar are the other two sons of Leah. Zebulun shall dwell at the shore of the sea. He shall become a haven for ships, and his border shall be at Sidon. Didn't quite reach Sidon, but it is up there. His border is there. You take a look at the allotment of the land, and that's how it came about. Issachar is a strong donkey crouching between the sheepfolds. He saw that a resting place was good, and that the land was pleasant, so he bowed his shoulder to bear, and became a servant at forced labour. Not sure how that panned out, but that could be seen as having come about when the northern kingdom started losing its strength, and taken into captivity were those more northern tribes, Issachar being one of them. Dan shall judge his peoples as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan shall be a serpent in the way, a viper by the path, that bites the horse's heels, so that his rider falls backwards. I wait for your salvation, O Lord. Verse 19, raiders shall raid Gad, but he shall raid at their heels. Gad does sound like the Hebrew for raiders. Gad was another Transjordan tribe. Gad was located between the tribe of Reuben and the tribe of half the tribe of Manasseh, which was further north, and they also had a city of refuge, Ramoth Gilead. But the two nations that were close by were Moab and Ammon, and of course those Transjordan tribes, Gad, Reuben, not so much Manasseh, but those two were the first to feel the brunt of any raiders that came from the two nations fathered by Lot, Moab and Ammon, Lot being Abraham's nephew. They should have been brother nations, but from time to time they would raid Israel. And of course Israel would get their own back later on as well. Asher's food shall be rich. He shall yield royal delicacies. Naphtali is a doe let loose that bears beautiful fawns. Joseph is a fruitful bough by a spring. His branches run over the wall, and archers bitterly attacked him, shot at him, and harassed him severely. Yet his bow remained unmoved. His arms were made agile by the hands of the mighty one of Jacob. From there is the shepherd, the stone of Israel. By the God of your father who will help you, by the Almighty who will bless you, with blessings of heaven above, blessings of the deep that crouches beneath, blessings of the breast and of the womb, the blessings of your father are mighty beyond the blessings of my parents, up to the bounties of the everlasting hills. May they be on the head of Joseph, and on the brow of him who was set apart from his brothers. So there's two tribes that receive the lion's share of the blessing, and that was Judah and Joseph. And Ephraim became which is Ephraim and Manasseh, of course, the sons of Joseph. Ephraim became the head of the northern kingdom, the most powerful of the tribes in the north when the kingdom was split into two. And Judah, of course, was the head of the southern kingdom. So these two become the major tribes. Then we come finally to Benjamin. Benjamin is a ravenous wolf, in the morning devouring the prey, and at evening dividing the spoil. All these are the 12 tribes of Israel. This is what their father said to them, as he blessed them, blessing each with the blessing suitable to him. Then he commanded them and said to them, I am to be gathered to my people. Bury me with my fathers in the cave that is in the field of Ephron the Hittite, in the cave that is in Machpelah at the east of Mamre, in the land of Canaan, which Abraham bought with the field from Ephron the Hittite to possess as a burying place. There they buried Abraham and Sarah his wife. There they buried Isaac and Rebekah his wife, and there I buried Leah. The field and the cave that is in it were bought from the Hittites. When Jacob finished commanding his sons, he drew up his feet into the bed and breathed his last, and was gathered to his people, meaning gathered to his ancestors, those who had died and gone before. That takes us to the end of Genesis 49. Let's turn over now to the book of Matthew. We're looking at Matthew chapter 26, and we'll end with Matthew. When Jesus had finished all these sayings, he said to his disciples, You know that after 2 days the Passover is coming, and the Son of Man will be delivered up to be crucified. Passover was one of the main feasts of the Jews. In fact, it was after the Passover in Egypt under Moses that a new calendar was given by God. And he said the beginning of months is from this moment on. So the Son of Man will be delivered up to be crucified. Then the chief priests and the elders of the people gathered in the palace of the high priest, whose name was Caiaphas, and plotted together in order to arrest Jesus by stealth and kill him. But they said, Not during the feast, lest there be an uproar among the people. Now when Jesus was at Bethany, and Bethany isn't far from Jerusalem, in the house of Simon the leper, a woman came up to him with an alabaster flask of very expensive ointment, and she poured it on his head as he reclined at table. And when the disciples saw it, they were indignant, saying, Why this waste? For this could have been sold for a large sum and given to the poor. But Jesus, aware of this, said to them, Why do you trouble the woman? She's done a beautiful thing to me. For you always have the poor with you, but you will not always have me. In pouring this ointment on my body, she has done it to prepare me for burial. Truly I say to you, wherever this gospel is proclaimed in the whole world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her. Then one of the 12, whose name was Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and said, "What will you give me if I deliver him over to you?" And they paid him 30 pieces of silver. And from that moment he sought an opportunity to betray him. Now, on the first day of unleavened bread, the disciples came to Jesus saying, "Where will you have us prepare for you to eat the Passover?" He said, "Go into the city to a certain man and say to him, 'The teacher says, my time is at hand. I will keep the Passover at your house with my disciples.'" And the disciples did as Jesus had directed them, and they prepared the Passover. When it was evening, he reclined at table with the 12. And as they were eating, he said, "Truly I say to you, one of you will betray me." And they were very sorrowful and began to say to him, one after another, "Is it I, Lord?" You see the doubt that's forming in each of their minds. Is it I, Lord? Perhaps recognizing that in themselves, as we all do, we recognize seeds of betrayal. That's the sin nature that we battle against, that we are to overcome. "Is it I, Lord?" He answered, "He who has dipped his hand in the dish with me will betray me. The Son of Man goes as it is written of him, but woe to that man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It would have been better for that man if he had not been born." Judas, who would betray him, answered, "Is it I, Rabbi?" He said to him, "You have said so," which means yes. Now as they were eating, Jesus took bread, and after blessing it, broke it, and gave it to the disciples, and said, "Take, eat, this is my body." And he took the cup, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to them, saying, "Drink of it, all of you, for this is the blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. I tell you, I will not drink again of this fruit of the vine until that day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom." And that's the setting up, the first of many times when Christians have got together to take bread and take wine or grape juice in many cases and share together in what we call communion with God, communion with our Lord Jesus Christ. And the body broken for us, or given for us, and the blood which is shed for us. Without the shedding of blood there is no forgiveness of sins, the Bible tells us. As John later on would say, it was actually earlier than this, but in the book of John, John the Baptist says, "Behold the Lamb of God," referring to Jesus, "who takes away the sin of the world." And when they had sung a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. Then Jesus said to them, "You will all fall away because of me this night. For it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I am raised up, I will go before you to Galilee." Peter answered him, "Though they all fall away because of you, I will never fall away." Jesus said to him, "Truly I tell you, this very night, before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. Peter said to him, "Even if I must die with you, I will not deny you." And all the disciples said the same. Then Jesus went with them to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to his disciples, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." And taking with him Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee, that's James and John, he began to be sorrowful and troubled. Then he said to them, "My soul is very sorrowful, even to death. Remain here and watch with me." And going a little further, he fell on his face and prayed, saying, "My Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me." That means the trial that's coming on ahead. "Let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will." And he came to the disciples and found them sleeping. And he said to Peter, "So could you not watch with me 1 hour? Watch and pray, that you may not enter into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak." Again, for the second time he went away and prayed, "My Father, if this cannot pass until I drink it, your will be done." And again he came and found them sleeping, for their eyes were heavy. So, leaving them again, he went away and prayed for the third time, saying the same words again. Then he came to the disciples and said to them, "Sleep and take your rest later on. See, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand." Of course, speaking of Judas Iscariot. While he was still speaking, Judas came, one of the 12, and with him a great crowd with swords and clubs from the chief priests and the elders of the people. Now the betrayer had given them a sign, saying, "The one I will kiss is the man. Seize him." And he came up to Jesus at once and said, "Greetings, Rabbi," and he kissed him. Jesus said to him, "Friend, do what you came to do." Then they came up and laid hands on Jesus and seized him. And behold, one of those who were with Jesus stretched out his hand and drew his sword and struck the servant of the high priest and cut off his ear. In another gospel you'll see that Jesus heals the man. Then Jesus said to him, "Put your sword back into its place, for all who take the sword will perish by the sword. Do you think that I cannot appeal to my Father, and he will at once send me more than 12 legions of angels? But how then should the Scriptures be fulfilled, that it must be so?" At that hour Jesus said to the crowds, "Have you come out as against a robber, with swords and clubs to capture me? Day after day I sat in the temple teaching, and you did not seize me. But all this has taken place that the Scriptures of the prophets might be fulfilled." Then all the disciples left him and fled, just as Jesus had foretold. Strike the shepherd and the sheep will be scattered. Then those who had seized Jesus led him to Caiaphas the high priest, where the scribes and elders had gathered. And Peter was following him at a distance, as far as the courtyard of the high priest. And going inside, he sat with the guards to see the end. Now the chief priests and the whole council were seeking false testimony against Jesus, that they might put him to death. But they found none, though many false witnesses came forward. At last 2 came forward and said, "This man said, I am able to destroy the temple of God and to rebuild it in 3 days." And Jesus had said something like that, but he was referring to the temple of his body, that he would be raised on the 3rd day. And the high priest stood up and said, "Have you no answer to make? What is that these men testify against you?" But Jesus remained silent, and the high priest said to him, "I adjure you, by the living God, tell us if you are the Christ, the Son of God." And Jesus said to him, "You have said so." It's the same as saying yes. "But I tell you, from now on, you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power, and coming on the clouds of heaven." Then the high priest tore his robes and said, "He has uttered blasphemy. What further witnesses do we need? You have now heard his blasphemy. What is your judgment?" They answered, "He deserves death." Then they spit in his face and struck him, and some slapped him, saying, "Prophesy to us, you Christ. Who is it that struck you?" Now Peter was sitting outside in the courtyard, and a servant girl came up to him and said, "You also were with Jesus the Galilean." But he denied it before them all, saying, "I do not know what you mean." And when he went out to the entrance, another servant girl saw him, and she said to the bystanders, "This man was with Jesus of Nazareth." And again he denied it with an oath, "I do not know the man." After a little while the bystanders came up and said to Peter, "Certainly you too are one of them, for your accent betrays you." Peter obviously was doing some talking, as Peter did. Then he began to invoke a curse on himself and to swear, "I do not know the man." And immediately the rooster crowed. And Peter remembered the saying of Jesus, "Before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times." And he went out and wept bitterly. Thank you for joining us for the reading today, and hopefully you can join us again tomorrow.